Hi, this is Tapcat, and welcome back to part 2 of our latest Q&A video. We have a lot of questions still to get to, so let's jump back in. Captain Grovesy says, if you had a choice to have only 2 kinds of soldiers, and he means in Xcom, what would they be? Also wanted to know where I'm from, and says hello from Australia. So hello from Southern California. That is where I live. So, wow, if I can only have 2 kinds of soldiers, I'd probably lose the campaign because I think the game is kind of structured around more variety, you know, like using the skills to complement each other. I feel like you have to have a grenadier for shredding. There's so many enemies in the late game where without that, you're really going to be hosed. I guess you could use special ammo to try to shred, but I think you have to have a grenadier. How are you going to win without a specialist to hack? But the specialist is the one I want least in combat. I mean, I really want either a ranger or a sharpshooter, a gunslinger. A gunslinger is way more versatile than a traditional sharpshooter, so that's easily the one I would want between the two. But yeah, that's brutal. I don't know what to tell you. I feel like it would end up having to be a grenadier and a specialist just because you have to be able to hack. But I guess if I had to choose, it would be grenadiers and sharpshooters and a lot of prayer. And I just know I would fail some missions. Blue Mercury says, I used to be an accountant like you. Then I took a sectoid to the knee. By the way, I love that. I never get tired of that, that meme. And I never even played Skyrim, but I watched a video on it and I thought it was hilarious. I think that's so cool. And my nephew who did play Skyrim, I mentioned it to him. He literally never noticed it the whole time he played. I thought that was great too. At any rate, his actual question is, am I going to play Mutant Year Zero's Seed of Evil DLC? You know what? I probably will. And maybe I should have played it now. Maybe I should have done that as soon as I finished XCOM Enemy Unknown. Now I'm working on Factorio for at least a little bit longer. So, you know, obviously that's not going to happen. But I think I will because I like Mutant Year Zero quite a bit. And, I didn't want to just jump right back into the DLC though. Like I wanted to give it a rest for a while. So we'll get there. P Clouds says, did you ever consider 1 push-up for every miss in XCOM or any other game where RNG is involved? You know, I don't know why, but I never did. And I'm not going to now either. No, oh my God, I can't even imagine. It would definitely make me less eager to, you know, because in these games, there are absolutely times where I'll say like, hey, listen, the only shots I have are bad ones, but if I take enough, we're going to get one. And it's better than doing nothing for that turn. Well, I wouldn't want to use that approach if I had to do a push-up every time. I mean, 1 push-up's no big deal, but you know, after a while, that starts to take a toll on you. I'm selling Nix. I don't know what that means, but anyway, he asks, what games do you have your eyes on? And can you allow us to vote on which one you play? Well, here's the thing, man. I have a whole wish list on Steam of games that I'm considering. Most of them aren't out yet, by the way. But if you can't tell from the answers I've already given, my biggest problem is that I do check them out and I end up not wanting to play them. I am at a point right now where if I can just find a game that I am loving and I want to do a full series for, it's go time. I wish my problem was that I had 10 and I just didn't know which one I wanted to play. So here, you guys, you go ahead. I have done that in the past, by the way. I don't remember if it was for games, but I know back when there was a day when Civilization 5 was kind of the backbone of my channel. I don't think anybody is left from that time now among my regular subscribers or at least commenters. But anyway, I know that there were times where I put up a list and said, hey, you know, which civilization would you like to see me play next and stuff like that. As long as I have a range of choices that I'm happy with, I'm totally cool with doing that. Right now, I'm just in a place where I need to find one. Cameron the Stork asks, what's my favorite soldier class in XCOM 2? I genuinely don't have one. I have a least favorite class, and that's the specialist. And then the other three basically tie for first. I think sharpshooters are amazing, and I love my rangers, and I love my grenadiers. And they're all very different, and I love different things about them. Specialist is the only one. I just never feel like I get out of them enough to merit that spot in the squad. They're there in case I need healing or a hack. That's really it. And that maybe it's just because I haven't figured out that class ever to the extent it deserves, but that's how I feel about it. Matthew Rutledge Taylor asks if Tapcat is a reference to a cat that drinks from a faucet. Well, I will say that much to my chagrin, I did learn after starting this channel that is a name that, yes, like people call it. When a cat is drinking from a faucet, it's referred to as Tapcat. And there are literal videos on YouTube that have that in it. I did not know that existed or have any sense of it at all when I adopted that name. It goes back to when I used to play Magic the Gathering online all the time, and that was my screen name for Magic. So the tap part refers to a mechanism in Magic where you tap your cards. And then the cat is just because I like cats. Cyril Scuttlebutt asks if I am an undercover Advent agent. Well, Cyril, not as far as you know. John of PA asks, what is my absolute favorite game of all time? It's pretty much a tie between Bloodborne and City of Heroes. You couldn't find two games that are a whole lot more different than those two. And I love completely different things about them. So it's very difficult for me to compare. But when I think of the games that I have loved playing the most, that is them. If we were strictly going by gameplay, then I would say Bloodborne. So there you go. Let's see. Meme Master says, what's a character in XCOM you spent more than 10 minutes in the creation of, if I have any? You know, in City of Heroes, I used to spend hours creating characters and then refining them later. XCOM is way more limited, right, in the scope of the editing you can do. I, nonetheless, have spent time on that from my very first playthrough. The first playthrough I did for the channel, I didn't talk about it in the videos at all, but I would just name characters after, sometimes like I had Michelle Rodriguez, the actress in there. And I edited her to look as much like that as possible. I had Sue Storm from the Fantastic Four, so just random comic book character in there. And it was just like a little Easter egg. It was something I enjoyed doing. And I thought, if people see these names and they actually get it, then that's great. And if they don't, then it doesn't matter, because I didn't make a big deal about it anyway. You know, it's just like, oh, that character named Michelle, you know. So in more recent times, I think it was my War of the Chosen playthrough, but it might have been season 4. We had the Swede. I know I put real time into making him look like as much like a Viking as I could. There have been many. That's the truth. I've done it for so many. I love fiddling with the character creators and giving those characters a unique and interesting look. Stephen Reeder asks, did I know you can increase the speed of your battle brothers in battle? Yes, that is something I learned very recently. Guy Brush Threepwood asks, who would win in a fight between me and Topcat? I think I am a lover, not a fighter, and I can't match those claws. So I'm going to give it to Topcat. Mike Riopel asks, what is my recording setup? I mentioned earlier, I have dual monitors, so that is part of it. For software, I use Audacity for audio, and it's great software and it's free. Hard to beat that. And then I also use OBS Studio. I was using NVIDIA's Shadowplay, but I bought a new video editing program, and it didn't like Shadowplay for some reason. It didn't like the video that came out of it, so I had to make a switch. And OBS Studio, also free, has been working really well. So I recommend either or both to anybody who wants it. And honestly, if you're not using the latest version of Vegas Pro, I think NVIDIA's Shadowplay is fantastic. And as long as you have an NVIDIA card, it's also free. So listen, I mean, if you have a PC, it's pretty awesome that you can get free software, and it's not like it has a bunch of ad pop-ups or anything, and it's really good quality. Tai Dong asks, how are you doing during these odd times? You know, all things considered, I can't complain, and I hope you are doing well also. Johan Schulte, I'm sorry, I'm sure I'm butchering that, asks, what was the first XCOM game you played, and were you any good at it? Well, the first one I played was Enemy Unknown. I never played the old ones, you know, from the Julian Gollop era. No, I was not good at it, actually. I feel like I played well in the series that I just recently uploaded, but I actually discovered Let's Plays on YouTube when I started playing Enemy Unknown, because I fell in love with the game, but it was just beating me like a rented mule. And I knew that there had to be people out there, you know, who could play better than that. So I was looking for guides and stuff, and I didn't really find a whole lot of that, but I did find channels that were playing it. And, sadly, most of them actually weren't as good at the game as I would have hoped, but they were better than me, and they helped me at least get to where I could win on classic difficulty. But it took me several campaigns before I didn't suck. Okay, Mike Savvy asks a question. Wow, this is definitely a change of pace, but I love it. Who do you think will win in the Iron Mike versus Roy Jones Jr. fight? What if they were both in their prime? Let me answer part 2 first. If they're both in their time, let me acknowledge Roy Jones Jr., one of the great pound-for-pound fighters of all time. I think he's widely given credit for that. But he was not a heavyweight, and when Mike Tyson was in his prime, and personally, I consider his prime the era when he was still a contender. Sadly, let me go back. When he was a contender, he used to fight every 2 to 3 months, and he would come out. He was constantly moving his head side to side, and he had his hands up. He was very elusive, and he destroyed everybody they put in front of him, and he ducked no one. And after he won the championship, they completely stopped that, and they only had him fight once or twice a year, because once you're the champ, they try to protect you. The problem is, once he didn't have to live in the gym anymore, that's when he got into all kinds of trouble. Just nothing but time on his hands to get into things that he would have been much better off not doing. So from that point on, he also got rid of his trainer and stuff, and his fight style went to hell. Sorry, we're turning this into boxing corner for a few minutes. So at that point, anyone with boxing skills could just frustrate him and neutralize him. But when he was at his best, I think he walks right through Roy Jones Jr. because speed and skill, they're not enough when you can't hurt him. You know, he was too relentless, and he would just come at you and come at you and come at you. And Mike had good hand speed. So I think Roy Jones would have probably been easily the best fighter he ever fought, you know, at that point in his career. But I don't think he could handle Mike at his best. Now, today, they're both washed up has-beens. Let's be honest. Neither one of them has any real business getting in the ring. You reach a certain age, boxing's a young man's game, you know? So I don't know who will win. If I had to guess, I would say Roy Jones, because I think Roy Jones is a more disciplined person, and he will train and he will do everything possible to ready himself for the fight. Mike hasn't had that since he was a contender. All right, Radek Sainicki, I'm not sure. He asks, have you considered making your own mods to XCOM 2? You know, I actually did. I even downloaded the package. I don't remember what they call it, but it's like a toolkit to make mods. And wow, did I come to have respect for people who do that. That was the end of it for me. I poked around in there for a few minutes and realized that I was going to have a whole lot of work if I was going to do that to even just begin to start. So that was it for me. Adam Juhas not sure if I'm pronouncing that correctly. I'm probably not. Asks, what other hobbies do you have besides gaming? Let me tell you, I have way too many things that interest me and hobbies that I have had over the years. I have way more interests than I have time. So photography is one of my hobbies, board gaming, comic book collecting, reading in general, even movies. I don't know that people consider watching movies a hobby, but I definitely, like kind of a home theater buff, and, I have somewhat of a movie collection and so forth. Target shooting is another thing I was very into for a while. So all kinds of stuff. Texas Belliot asks if I have ever owned anything but a Windows PC, and asks about the Amiga as an example. And that is a great guess. Yes, I did used to own an Amiga. I still have such fond memories of some of the games I played on that. Lemmings was one of my favorites. Bard's Tale. I used to play a lot of sports games back then, and they had a franchise called TV Sports. And I loved the football and basketball games on there. Really fun. Earl Weaver Baseball was another game I played the hell out of on that system. So yeah, I did have an Amiga. I loved it. And I assume you're talking about PCs in particular, or computers as opposed to consoles. So I think that's the only one. Anthony Artman asks, are you Tom Hanks? Well, not officially, no. Noah Clayman asks if I felt like going for the Army of Four campaign during my recent Xcom Enemy Unknown series, was able to slow down the difficulty snowball in the game. And I actually think it did help. The problem, for those who don't know, when you're playing Enemy Unknown, the beginning is just so unforgiving, and it's so easy to lose soldiers just at the drop of a hat. But then you reach a turning point where you have real armor and you get weapons that hit really hard, and you pretty much just start tearing through the aliens. It's not impossible to lose, guys, but it's very rare you feel threatened. Only having 4 soldiers and therefore, literally a third fewer actions available. Wow, did that make a difference? So it's not the same tension level as you have in the beginning. I'm not going to say that it is, but it definitely keeps you on your toes. And like that final mission, I definitely felt a lot more nervous than I would have if I'd have been in there with a crew of 6, for sure. All right, last question from White Ops Dude. Actually, 3 questions. Are you going to play Battle Brothers Blazing Deserts? Well, let me just say, I mentioned in an earlier question that I have been going to school on a game recently, and it is Battle Brothers. Honestly, man, I don't know if I can do it. I'm not done trying yet, but there's a lot I like about Battle Brothers, but there's parts of it that just really drain the fun out of it for me. It's funny because everybody always complains about RNG, and the first time I played it, I felt like, man, this combat seems really random. But I was always mindful of the fact that people always say that to me about Darkest Dungeon and XCOM. Oh, it's just RNG. No, it's not. You have to learn how to play in such a way to minimize the role of RNG. And I always felt like that's probably true of Battle Brothers too, but I just couldn't figure out how. Well, to some extent, I have worked through some of that. But what I hate is crap like, hey, we always keep you really short of money, but pay a bunch of money to recruit a guy, and then he'll have completely random stats. And there's a really good chance that they'll suck and that you just wasted that money because you didn't get anybody who's going to really be useful for you. That kind of thing really aggravates me, where I can't make an informed choice. I just have to basically gamble, and it has such a huge impact. So I don't know. I haven't completely written it off yet, but it's funny because I'm playing way better now than I did when I did the series, but I don't know that I'm enjoying it a ton more. Next question. How many cats did I have? I had 1. And by the way, we did recently adopt another one. So I have 1 again. I have had as many as 2 years ago, but yeah, I'm not a big fan of, I'm never going to be a guy who has 10 cats running around the house, but a couple I think is fine. Anyway, last question. Name one game that disappointed me really badly. So I would say I'll give you 2, because in the last, I don't know, 5 years or 10 years, these are probably the 2 that stick out in my mind. One is Xcom The Bureau. I can't remember. I think that came out before XCOM 2. Maybe it was after that. I guess it was. But anyway, I loved Enemy Within Enemy Unknown and XCOM 2. And they made some really cool cinematic trailers for The Bureau. Nothing to do with gameplay at all, but really cool atmospheric pieces. And then the game came out, and I'm not even saying it was bad. It's a third-person shooter, and I suck at shooters, and I don't really enjoy them. And I knew it was going to be a shooter, but for some reason, because it was XCOM, and I thought the trailers were cool, I was like, oh, this is going to be amazing. And I played, and within like a half hour, I was like, oh, God. I can't play this. So, and I know a lot of people were really disappointed with The Bureau. That's very high on my list. But I think maybe even more than The Bureau was the last version of SimCity. That was a game, I had played, I think the original version ages ago, loved it. And then I wanted to play the new one, and I didn't grudge about the small map. There was a lot of stuff people bitched about before it ever came out. And I was like, whatever. I don't like that it's online all the time, but I'll deal with it. Well, that game, people talked about how the traffic was broken as if that was the only problem. Oh my God. Let me tell you, I've spent a lot of hours in it, even though it disappointed me because I was so hungry for that experience. But it was broken everywhere. Everything that I delved into, I would discover wasn't working. It was crazy how incompetent they were when they put that thing together. There's no other word for it. They had some cool ideas, but wow, the actual programming work, just at a pure technical level, that thing shipped in a disastrous state and stayed that way for months and months. Like you would have one factory making parts and deliver it to another factory to assemble it. And then you'd literally watch the truck unload the parts. But then in the assembly plant, the inventory would never change. It would just stay at 0. They didn't get it, even though you watched it happen. And there were so many things like that in the game that just at a fundamental level did not function as intended. Forget whether you liked how it was intended to work. It just didn't work. So I think actually SimCity is probably my number 1 in anything you could consider recent years. And that's been quite a while now. All right. I think that's going to wrap it up for this round. Thanks to every single person who gave me a question. I got to as many as I possibly could. Even breaking this into 2 pieces, it's going to still be, a lot for people to sit through. But at any rate, yeah, thanks a lot. I always have fun doing these. I hope you enjoy listening to them. That's all for now. Thanks for watching. I hope we see you next time.